right, we are back. How's everyone doing? And once again, my Stream Deck decides that it doesn't want to work. Cool. Hello, we're back, and luckily we have alcohol. Welcome to the Through Our Eyes podcast. I'm Drac, and I'm joined by our lovely co-host, Pan. Would you like to introduce yourself, Pan, and tell us a little bit about the Through Our Eyes project?
Yes, I'm Pan. I am the co-host of the Through Our Eyes podcast when I am not playing video games or being a community manager in the charity sector. The Through Our Eyes project started last year when I was a full-time content creator, as I wanted to sort of highlight marginalised communities and to not just play games all the time, but try and actually, as I say, highlight people and talk about life and experiences and try and share a little bit of what we live with and what we go through and to learn about each other. So that started last year. But what we realized was when we had so many people on for the entire sort of duration of the podcast, of the show, we didn't really get to know anyone that well. So we decided we'd turn it into a podcast format, and every sort of other week or so, we do a 2-hour show with an individual person and get to learn more about them specifically.
Yep, so we've on episode 29 now, where we've been doing this for nearly 2 years, which is terrifying. But yes, so basically the Through Our Eyes podcast is here to highlight marginalized creators, where we tackle taboo subjects and have a little snapshot into individuals' stories, ranging from subjects like being LGBTQIA, BIPOC, or suffering from a chronic illness, or living with a mental health issue. So yes, if you would like to submit any questions for our interviewee, there is a channel points redemption. All alerts, hopefully, are silent, and obviously I will try to read chat, but we'll be concentrating on the podcast, which is, you know, for the podcast it's a normal, but for my streams it's obviously not a norm. But we want to make sure that we are addressing the topic at hand and giving the time and space and attention that it needs. So, without further ado, let's introduce our guest. Hello, tell us who you are and your pronouns and why you're here.
There, I'm the Demented Raven, or you can call me Raven, whatever you wish. I am here today to discuss BPD, which is what I have. My pronouns are she, they, he. You can use whatever ones you wish. And yeah, so that is pretty much the topic today. I'm a disabled creator and musician, freelance composer. So this is a wee brief description about myself.
And where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/TheDementedRaven, Demented Raven at Bandcamp, or all music platforms and Spotify, such as Spotify, Amazon Music. That's where my EPs are, and TheDementedRaven on Twitter as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Can I get shout outs in the chat, maybe? just you know, just so that people can find our co-host and our guest. It'd be great if anyone's around. It's been one of those days and we've had some technical difficulties already, so yes.
Always happens.
Right, so if everyone is doing okay and ready, then let's move on to our first question. Yeah? Awesome. Right. Okay, so what we'd like to start with is just basically a lowdown of your story, why you're here and when did it start?
Well, I'm here because to raise more awareness about BPD. It's got a lot of misconceptions and whatnot, especially in the media and just in the world in general. It's got its own rep. But I'm also here to discuss my story. It all started about late 2019, where well, I've had depression ever since I was a teenager, young adult, and I noticed something was wrong about 2009, 2010. But it was only 2019 I noticed something was severely wrong. Unfortunately, my mood dropped intensely and I was breaking down. And I had an inkling something was wrong years prior, but I couldn't really describe it. I was having breakdowns and whatnot and seeing psychologists. But it was only 2019 where it all came to a head, where I suddenly broke down in tears and had the sudden urge to kill myself. And which was very, very unusual of me. I only had that like twice in like really high depression phases in the past. It wasn't something that it was just something completely abnormal for me. And I know something was very strange about it, because it kept happening the next few weeks and things like that, and my mood was really intensely low. And then I was going through more elated phases as well, which were abnormal compared to just like a regular good day. And then as things got worse, I was not in a safe mind frame at all. 2020, I got a psychiatric nurse, and as you might have heard in the UK, the NHS can be really difficult getting like appointments and things like that. So I was incredibly lucky to get the help that I got, and the woman was really lovely. She was always checking in, and at first I was getting tested for bipolar due to like my changes in moods and my suicidal ideation, which was pretty much constant at this point. And it came back after doing like mood tests and that, which is something that I had to do to get tested for bipolar. It came back that I wasn't bipolar. I wasn't matching the criteria. So, but I knew something was seriously wrong, like something is truly awakened, even though it was probably awake before, but it really like it really hit the fan at this point. And so for the rest of that year, I was constantly suicidal and in bad stages, or really elated stages and things like that, but not knowing what was wrong with me. And then last year was the worst yet. Every month there was always a suicide attempt, unfortunately. And obviously I'm still here, thankfully. They failed, or for one reason or another, or because of like good company keeping me together and stuff like that. But yeah, it was last year I no longer had my psychiatric nurse anymore, and then I was left with no support at all, and I was completely lost and I was freaking out. And but luckily I got referred to before I get onto that, 2020 was the first time I actually went on medication. And I'm a stubborn being, and I didn't take any meds for personal reasons. I'm just too stubborn. I just push on. But it got to the point where my life was at stake. I had to do something about it. And there's no shame in meds. There's no shame at all, because there's a stigma behind them as well. So I took them, and unfortunately the ones I was given didn't really help. They were called sertraline, and they didn't really help. And then I was on another antipsychotic because of how intense my moods were, because they were incredibly intense. I was on something called quetiapine, and unfortunately that would help make me tired enough to not attempt anything, but then it didn't work anymore. And then I was getting then they stopped working entirely, even when they upped my dosage, so I stopped taking them. Now, since last year, I then got referred to psychiatry to try some new meds, and I'm on some medication, antipsychotics and antidepressants that I'm happy with. And I also got diagnosed by my psychiatrist, BPD, and that opened a lot of doors of support and help. And the psychiatrist in question was actually really helpful, because I've had like a mixture of doctors which weren't really, due to the pandemic, they had to keep changing their posts. So I was getting doctors I didn't know and stuff like that. And then eventually I got settled down with one doctor who actually listened and took all my concerns seriously. And then I got tested for BPD, and it came back. I met the criteria for BPD, which really helped, because I felt like for me, I felt like I needed answers for why this was happening. Then once I had the answers, I could get the right support. I could understand myself a bit more. And whilst I still have my all sorts of moods and that, I'm definitely in a safer place than what I was last year, for instance. And whilst my meds help to a degree, nothing can help my extremely low points. But thankfully, things have been a lot more calmer in comparison. So, but that's pretty much the story of how it came to be in BPD and just the sudden change where I felt like I needed help and things like that.
Okay, well, thank you for going through that. I know that it's
Very hard.
it's a very difficult thing to go through and
Yeah.
organize your thoughts even in the best of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
Right. So you said that it's only really recently actually been diagnosed. So going
last year.
back for before the events that triggered you to actually seek an assessment initially.
Yep.
Did anything clue you in before that, like when you were younger, that because you said you suffered from depression, but was that the only thing that actually
no,
arose
I actually
during that time?
well, BPD is also with BPD, another common thing for people to have that is people having symptoms of like past trauma, and I had a pretty chaotic upbringing growing up, and things were pretty chaotic, especially on the parental side, my mother in particular. So there was a lot of like past memories that really affect me to this day. My confidence was incredibly low and stuff like that, and just a lot of things like feeling like feelings of hopelessness and whatnot, or feeling I wasn't meant to amount to anything and things like that. So I know those feelings still exist from time to time, especially with my BPD, and especially with doing content creation as well. What was it? Everyone has these thoughts, but I noticed they hit me incredibly hard. What if they like merge with like the past thoughts and stuff like that as well? Like, it can be incredibly difficult. But another thing, I noticed before, I noticed something was seriously wrong. I had an inkling during my psychology, whenever it came to like friendships or just super elated moods. All of a sudden, I noticed something seemed strange then, but my psychologist didn't pick up on it. She just thought I was okay and things like that. But I knew deep down that I wasn't. And as on the friendships front, it's like I would like with some people I would fear like I would be abandoned and things like that, or I'd find out I've got like a very favorite person, and the feelings get incredibly strong. Like they feel obsessive, even if I'm not being obsessive. 'Cause I know that's a common thing in BPD, having a favorite person that you really admire a lot and things like that, and that can like change and things like that. But I noticed, looking back, maybe BPD signs were evident back then, and what was it? But I just didn't know what it was, but I just knew there was something that wasn't just my autism, because I know BPD and autism can overlap because I'm autistic as well, and I go for a number of health conditions as it is. I'm chronically ill and disabled, and I just knew there was something else on the list, but I just didn't know what.
And from my recollection, we haven't actually clarified what BPD stands for.
Borderline personality disorder, or it's also known now as EUPD, emotionally unstable personality disorder as well. That seems to be the current name for it, but a lot of people still use the term BPD, so I use both.
All right. Just because I thought that's something that we probably want to get out there first, is make sure that we've clarified what it is that we're talking about today.
Not a problem.
If I may jump in quickly, I just wanted to actually pick up on a comment that you said that kind of reminded me of something my husband said to me recently, because he was saying that like you understand that some of like the thoughts and the feelings you were having were what other people had, but they were like far more intense in you. And I think that's possibly where some of the stigma, especially around mental health, comes from, is because people assume that the thoughts and the feelings are alien, but they're not. Like, my husband's autistic, and I've got my ADHD assessment next week, but it's very, very likely I have ADHD.
Yeah.
And my versions of emotions compared to his are like 100 times at some points, but it's still the same emotion. It's just we all perceive it super differently. So I can imagine that's got to be super frustrating for you. And it's like, I feel the same, but it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, there's a lot of stigma where people, like, if you get, like, for example, my instance, I like get really emotional about something that may seem like small or just insignificant, and then people accuse you of being over dramatic or a drama queen or things like that. But in reality, they just don't understand how intense it is. Or you get people like saying like, "Oh, everybody goes through this" and things like that, and it's a very closed-minded mind process. It's like you don't know what's going on in someone's head. Things could be a lot more intense than they let on as well, because masking's also a thing. Because people tend to like also mask their emotions out of fear of getting these like comments like they're over dramatic and stuff like that. They don't want to make a fuss. And they just want to keep it as minimal as possible, and they get that used to it. Unless it's something incredibly hard hitting, then they just break down completely, and then they just feel worse for doing so. You just fear the stigma.
So, with the fact that you have autism and are chronically ill, how easy or difficult did you find it to get that diagnosis or to pinpoint down what it was that was actually causing your symptoms?
I found it not too difficult because what was it? I know it's not everyone in everyone's case that, but in my case I was really observant with it, and I just knew it wasn't I just knew it wasn't my autism causing it. It just felt like there was another thing causing it. I just didn't know what this thing was, but for some time I knew there was a thing. It just felt like something just like really pushed into my head even more so than it ever did, where before it felt like it was more in the sidelines until like 2019 hit and it just all just came flooding in. That's what it felt like. And I did do some like research just to see if these how valid these feelings were. So when BPD came up, I approached it with caution because it's one of those diagnoses you've got to really approach with caution, because it can like match others, or it's just really complex like a number of other conditions out there. So when I brought it up to my psychiatrist, he actually listened and was like, approaching it with caution, but taking my thoughts seriously rather than just shoving them away, going, "Oh, you read this, oh, you're thinking you're this." And I'm like, I'm not saying I'm anything. I just would like some answers and just get some tests to see what's what and what's not. And if it's not, I can just rub it out type thing. But I feel like this could be a thing, but if it's not, then at least I know. And he got everything sorted. And and one thing that's I always say, and I'm sure you all would agree, having the right doctor, it makes a world of difference. It makes a massive world of difference.
Yeah, your medical professional that you have access to very much can be the the make or break situation of every diagnosis and the treatment of such. So what has other than medication, have you been receiving other mental health support, and what has been your experience with it?
Before I used to go to, before I was diagnosed with BPD, I used to go to, well, at first when I was going in for my depression, they tried what do you call them? Is it CPD? CBD?
CBT.
No, CBT,
CBT,
that's it.
yeah.
I know it was something like that. CBT. I know what am I saying? CBT. And whilst it was good to come across that at first, it became a bit of a cop-out, because every time I went to the doctors, they kept referring me to that. They kept referring me to that over and over. And I was like, look, I really need help. I want a psychologist. I want something that's not just this. And this can help a lot of people, but it's got to the point where it wasn't helping me anymore. So, and then eventually I got referred to like psychology, and I was there for a while. And then I got referred to some courses up at the hospitals, and where I was doing like forms of mindfulness and that, which were some were pretty helpful. But then when things started intensifying, it got to the point where nothing was helping anymore, and I was really needing things more invasive treatments, such as like medication and things like that. And it got to the point where I was starting to fear that I might need to be admitted, but thankfully it didn't get to that. So I managed to like keep myself out of that path. So, but yeah, I've had like different types of like therapy and help, and I can see what some may help, some may not help others. Everyone's different, but I've definitely seen all sides, which is very useful. But the problem, like I said, it depends who you get as well. Depends on the doctor, because I've definitely had some. We were just talking about how some doctors can be not very helpful, because I went through a really big journey for endometriosis, and I had a number of doctors that weren't very understanding with that, and it was a really rough journey. But long story short, I got my answers with that in the end. But that was probably one of the toughest journeys I had. So
Oh, I feel that one.
it was a nightmare.
Okay, so let's move on to our next question of telling us a little bit about what it feels like having BPD. What challenges do you face, and how has it affected your life physically, emotionally, and socially?
It can be absolutely difficult. When I'm in an okay spell, I can just get through the motions and do all my normal things. Well, if my body lets me, but that's a different subject, because I've got like a cocktail of problems. But what was it? When it's really bad, it can be really hard to get out of bed some days. I can just be incredibly depressed. My motivation is down the toilet, and everything can just be a complete and utter struggle. And then if I'm like incredibly suicidal, I've got to have something like my husband with me, make sure I don't have anything silly in my head that I would want to do. So it can be, and it's like a roll of the dice type thing. It can like change each day, or go through a really massive phase. As for socially, I tend to get by okay. But what was it? When I have a favorite person, that can be pretty evident. And what was it? And I get on okay with that. I just be myself. I just get highly appreciative towards said person. But I also my mind also overthinks, and I worry that I might have bothered them or something, and it feels like it's the end of the world when that's the case and things like that. It's like when I feel like I've done something wrong, even when I've not done something wrong, it just hits me really hard, and I feel like I've let said person down and things like that. Or and or if they happen to be friends with someone I didn't really get along with, I just panic and things like that, even though there's nothing to panic about, and I just try and calm myself down and go, it's fine, it's fine. It's just my mind goes into an overthinking mess, especially when it comes to like a favorite person. And as for what was it, socially? Oh yeah, and when my moods are more elevated, some BPD people may call it manic, but it's not manic as in bipolar manic. There's been a debate where if people can call these moods manic, and there's like some people in the BPD community saying it's fine, but as long as you don't compare it to bipolar, and there's others that say you shouldn't. And I have none against the term being you called manic, as long as you don't compare it to BPDs and not call it BPDs. So I've had some really elevated situations, which I've only really had one scary one, which happened to be, oh, when was that movie by Pixar out, that Turning Red? Was that this year? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was this year. Okay, it was this year, definitely, because I had a really elated phase, which was like some form of mania, not BPD, not bipolar mania, just very elevated. And I remember I just couldn't sleep, so I just stayed up watching that movie. And then when I did try and sleep, all I could see was shapes, and I just felt like I was moving in fast motion, doing my day errands, and I was just terrified of how high I felt. And it was just like, okay, this is scary. And sometimes when I reach that spell, I get suicidal then, because it's like both sides. It's like when I'm too low, it's like, okay, let's just end it today. Or if I'm too high, it's like, hooray, I don't care anymore. Let's just end it. So when it gets that high, it can be really scary as well. Hence why I don't have a problem with people calling it manic, but not calling it bipolar manic. So elated, elevated, whatever people wish to call it, if they don't feel that term is correct. But yeah, that can be really hard when I'm in a mood like that. It's like I may have stupid thoughts to do something stupid and things like that, and then only realize afterwards like that was a bad idea and things like that. So it can be scary because with BPD is like the moods are just extreme, and that's pretty much it. It's like if you're down, it'll just hit you at the extreme. When you're up, it'll hit you in the extreme. Hence why they like to use multiple terms. So it can be really, really difficult. It's like I try my best to stay in the middle, and when I'm in the middle, I'm doing okay. But there can be, unfortunately, triggers that can set off either or. So it's just more trying to it can be completely unpredictable as well. It's just trying my best each day to just keep going the best I can. So it can just be like walking on tightropes some days more than others, where I'm a bit more stable. It's just a luck of the draw, really.
So, what kind of behaviors would you say you experience during these elated mood periods?
Just get excited. There's one thing I like about the elated moods is when I get suddenly really motivated again. My motivation comes back tenfold, and I feel like I can do anything, and I'll do what I can till I burn myself to the ground. But it's not always, as you can imagine, it's not always a good thing. It's like if I'm just burning myself to the ground, I'm just going to get burnt out afterwards and things like that. And it just feels like everything's just on like fast motion, and everything's just really quick, and everything's just really impulsive and things like that. It can be like a very impulsive mind frame.
Well, that's one of the reasons that mania is described as such a problematic symptom, because it's an addictive
Yeah,
mood
exactly.
set. It's because you feel so good,
Like
and
on top of the world.
yeah, that it can be an addiction to one's own mood state, rather than, because it's such a contrast to the alternative.
Yep, that's why. So that's why like the one half of the community call it mania, because of the impulsiveness and how moods tend to like swift that way more than anything, which I can completely understand because it can be really intense.
And how often would you say that these occur, just in general?
Thankfully, they had the antipsychotics were to help with my mania, my elated sense of feeling, and it tends to numb it often, because it can get too intense, and I don't get it a lot. I tend to get more lows than I do highs, but it's not been often lately. Like maybe once every few months, I think. Like something will trigger it, and then that's it. But I think I had one since that turning red incident, but that turning red incident was probably about springtime, I think. So that's how I remember. I was thinking that movie. It was about then.
And how long would one of these triggers last? Like, how long would you be in this state?
Like in a late state like this, normally it'll either be the rest of that day or a number of hours. But that turning red day was about 2 days. So I think that was probably the longest one I had. I think I've had it for a few days, but it wasn't as intense. But that big one was about 2 days. And my down moods tend to last way longer. It can go on for months or years. It just depends. Because like last year, I was really bad all year, and then the same with the year before. It was like it's been like 3 years. It was really bad. So the pandemic didn't help, but
I was going to say at that point, that's definitely not going to help anyone's
no
situation. But do you know why it is that there's such a contrast in like the length of one versus the other?
I'm not. It's really hard to say. I think it depends on. I think it depends on the person and the triggers and that. Because I tend to normally get lower rather than higher, and can't really remember what really triggers the higher points. To be honest, at the moment, it's just a massive blur. To be honest, I can identify the low triggers, but the high ones, I'm really not. I'm really not sure. To be honest, it just happens. It just like it's like. It's like just a ping in my head. It's the ping in my head when I hit the low points that's the most concerning in my point of view. But
Yeah.
it's really hard. It's really hard to say. My mind's just one big blur.
So, you said that you do know what kind of triggers you get for your low points. So, what
Yeah.
would you describe as a trigger?
For example, if I see for example, I remember I was thinking of a specific place to end it one time, and I was fixated on this idea for about, I don't know, 2 to 3 months, and there was a bus that said the location of the place I wanted to end it, and that was one trigger in particular that comes to my mind straight away. And I remember that happened, and then at that point I was just like, okay, time to go. But it was like a robot. When a trigger hits me and it's a suicidal one, it will just click and I'll just be like, okay, that's it, I'm done. But thankfully at that point I wasn't on my own, so I wasn't able to do anything. So I was really lucky then. It's like it could be like specific, like I said, it was a bus that triggered me there, but it could be a multiple range of things. It can be certain types of music, it can be certain types of memories or memories linking to other memories, and it can just be anything really. It's a lot. It's figured at the top of my head my weak spot, but I know there's like a list of things that could definitely trigger me off, and then just suddenly that's it. Like some really sometimes some certain tragic things can like hit me, especially if they hit home, and it can just like really hit me bad. So, but I find it easier to identify the low ones than the high ones, because then I'll go think back and go, oh, okay, that's on the list. So,
Um, sorry, my brain just blanked when I tried to think of the.
no, it's okay.
The question went in and then it went out the other end. Nope, it's gone.
Right, I've
So
got one. When it comes to one of those moods, you only have to share this if you want to, but is there something you find that helps, or like someone that you can turn to that you know that you can speak to, or like what do you do to help yourself manage those moods?
for example, if it's a situation where my husband's at work, I know one of the things I always do is have my phone right next to me, and then I'll message like one of my best friends, and one attempt was actually stopped because my phone went off, and I was just like, do I want to die or do I want to see what that is? And my curiosity won. And it turned out to be my best friend replying to me, and I was just like, you saved me, by the way. And
Good timing.
I know the timing was really good. They were just like, oh crap, it's okay, you can message me anytime this happens, you've got this, it's all right, and things like that, just been reassuring as always. So I always have my phone on me for like just to like keep myself distracted, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if I'm like on my own, I need something there, and sometimes I'll get a call like, oh shit, Raven, are you okay? Let's distract you type thing. But that's what I tend to normally do, is keep my phone with me, and any other time it's just either failed or something's like held me back type thing. But yeah, the phone is one big thing I tend to do.
So yeah, so it's mostly distraction until you're in, I guess, a more rational sort of state
Yeah,
to, I guess,
yeah,
think about it
yeah, and then
clearer.
I just distract myself and to keep me from doing anything else. Because if I'm actually talking to someone, I won't be doing anything because it's the type of thing I'd rather just like hide away. If like someone's like approaching, I will immediately stop type thing. So I'm like, yeah, it's pretty grim. It's pretty grim.
So what other challenges has it presented to you? Like having the diagnosis, for example, with working with your streaming.
Yeah. What was it? It has affected me with streaming at times. Like I've been either too depressed to stream, or what was it? I've even had a breakdown or two on stream before because of it, which is actually pretty grim. Because I remember one time I just felt like complete and utter failure one day. I can't remember why. I think I was going through a bit of a dry spell, and I was doing fine coping with it. But then one day it just hit me hard on stream, and I'm not one to cry, and so I ended up crying, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna have to stop the stream today. So that wasn't grand. But things I also I've noticed about BPD. There's like people that can be very skeptic about it. I've definitely had the "oh, you're faking it" type comments so far. Just like, are you serious? Why would I fake this? And then I've noticed like attitudes in social media being like incredibly difficult about it. Like saying, "Oh, you've just been diagnosed because of TikToks and stuff like that," and it's just like, "Oh my word, please stop!" It's like, no, I didn't. I went to a professional. It's just people are just too quick to jump the gun, thinking it's like, "Oh, is this the popular thing now?" and stuff like that. And it's like, no, it's not like that at all. Why would I make something like this up? I don't want to suffer. I don't want to feel suicidal all the time. It's horrible. But yeah, it's just I've just been met with like skepticism and things like that, and it's just pretty frustrating to be honest. So
And how has it been with, for example, family and friends? Like, has the diagnosis changed anything with your relationships?
no, to be honest, everyone's actually been really great. My close circle have been really understanding. They're just like, "You're you, and glad you got answers, and no matter what, you're you, and I'm always here for you." And my husband's also been really supportive as well, and just everyone I spoke to about it has been not not judging at all. They've just been absolutely lovely. Things haven't changed at all. They're just like, or either that, or they'll show a slight bit of concern, like, "Oh crap, are you okay?" It's like, "No, not really, but I've got answers now, and I'm getting support." And they're just like, "Well, I'm here for you." Just they're just being caring, as you'd hope, and they do. So I'm really lucky. I'm really lucky.
So it hasn't, for example, helped you in understanding your interactions with others, or helped you recognize, like,
It has helped me recognize like my patterns towards people. Like if I have a meltdown, like I feel like someone's like either being questionable, or if my mind's shifted on a specific favorite person of like the first time in like years or something, I've become more aware of that. Where even back in the past, I noticed something was up. I didn't know what it was, but now that I know that I've got BPD and I'm aware of the whole social interaction thing, I've become more aware of it, and I've become thinking of more ways to like cope when things get like really intense and upsetting for me. So I've definitely been more aware of that and thinking of more coping mechanisms and things like that. So yeah, that's a thing.
okay. Pan, do you have any further comments before I move on to the next question?
No, I
That's
think we're
fine.
good. Yeah, I think we're good to go to the next one.
Okay, cool.
That's Raven's good, so.
Right. What's something you wish people knew about? What stigmas or misconceptions do you experience?
Oh, there's a big misconception about BPD. Oh my gosh. This one does nothing more than anything. Amber Heard, you might have heard of her. Apparently, she's got BPD, and people are like, and because of the questionable things she's been doing, what was it? People are now like jumping the gun that BPD people are this and that, and there's been people saying that BPD people are monsters and things like that, and that's not the case at all. People are acting like they're just not good people and things like that, and that is not true at all. That is a complete and utter misconception in any form. No one should be made fun of for having that, including Miss Heard as well. Nobody should be made fun of for having like a condition at all. It's just a low form of words. It's just not right.
Okay, and have you experienced yourself any stigmas or?
Thankfully, I've not experienced too much. Just the whole people just the whole more outside my circles. It's just more randoms being more skeptic about my health, like going, "Oh, you're probably exaggerating. Oh, it's not real. I don't believe you," and things like that. Just more skepticism more than anything else, and which is really frustrating in itself. But I've not dealt with too much touch wood so far, and here's hoping it stays that way. So
Question at this point, because I was just thinking back over what you were saying a minute ago. Unfortunately, my brain seems to be running 5 minutes slow, so
that's okay.
it keeps coming back. But I've been using TikTok a lot recently because I've been finding it quite interesting, and I've been using it for work. So I definitely have seen both sides of this argument for people being like, you know, you can't diagnose yourself on TikTok, but self-diagnosis is valid. With something like BPD, is self-diagnosis something that actually is, you know, viable within the community, or is it something more, if you have suspicions that you may have BPD, you should be going to a doctor
Yeah.
as soon as possible?
Yeah, BPD is one of those ones. Like bipolar, BPD is one of those ones where it's best to see a professional because due to its incredibly complex and intense natures on both sides of the scale. Because whilst there's some things that are more self-diagnosable in comparison, I also feel BPD is one of those ones that is best to get checked because it overlaps with so many other things, and there's been stories of people being misdiagnosed with BPD when they're autistic or the other way around. I seem to have both, but that's not always the case for everyone. And I've got nothing against people going on TikTok to actually learn more about it and things like that. It's good to be educated and to go, wait, that sounds like me. That's how we learn. But if you have like an inkling on something like BPD, it's best. Feel free to research all you want, then present your case. But I would present your case to a health professional, and then they can listen. And if it's anything like my psychiatrist, they will take you seriously, and hopefully, and then they can actually test to confirm. Because it's not like because it's a condition that's to be approached with caution. My psychiatrist, whilst taking me seriously, definitely took it with caution and was really careful because it's a really tricky one. It's like a maze. This one, it's worth getting checked. It's one I feel that you definitely should get a diagnosis for professionally. But I understand why people are like skeptic of doctors and that, which is why it's always good to get a second opinion if you have doubts, because there's always a bad egg in the bunch, so it's always good to double check.
I have a question. As someone with a personality disorder myself, how did you go about specifically knowing that it was BPD and not any of the other options?
What was it? I did suspect. What was it? I did suspect bipolar initially, to be honest, because it ran in my family. It runs in my family, so I thought, okay, if my mum's got bipolar, and I know it can sometimes be hereditary, so I thought it'd be worth checking out, especially with the tense moods I'm going through. But obviously, I don't know everything about it, and even though I have done homework about it, I'd rather get a medical point of view or something that's as complex as this, and I did. And then I can't remember how I came across BPD, but I think it was somehow merged in the research of bipolar, because there is people that tend to mix up the two, which they are both different. And I think at first I didn't think much of it until I can't remember what it was. I don't know if it was TikTok or not. I came across something that spoke to me, and I was just like, okay, maybe I should look more into this properly and actually see. And then the more I looked into it, and then the more it really it really just spoke out, and I was just like, I think I need to talk to a doctor about this and see if this is it. If not, fair enough. But this is definitely like burning on my brain now. So then here we go. That's pretty much what happened.
So what else do you wish people knew about BPD?
That's a good question. That we're people just like everyone else, and we have our struggles, but we also have our pluses. And we definitely, when it comes to people, whilst we have our fears and insecurities, which can be really intense, we also care very deeply for people and like respect them immensely. And whilst we have our struggles, we can still do things that other people do. Like we can still work, we can still do this, we can still do that. In some cases, maybe not. Everyone's different. Sometimes it may be too crippling to even like do certain work and stuff like that. But yeah, we're people, we can do stuff. We're not monsters like the media tries to paint us out to be. And we should be given a chance and not be forced back because of what we've got. Because I know BPD and a number of other conditions, if some people look in your record, they're just like, oh no, straight away. That shouldn't be a thing. Stigma needs to bugger off.
And how have you found access to support financially or in finding support for work or such forth in terms of your BPD? Like, what has been the response to that specifically?
Right now, I've just been mainly focusing on the support with my psychiatrist, which I've been seeing once every few months, and then just like seeing if my meds need tuned up or whatnot. And I did have more active appointments than that before, and like psych nurses and that. But things have more taken a calm down. I'm just more just getting on as a little bit more normal now, and just keeping someone aside, so that I've got support. And if there's any issues, I've been constantly told by doctors and that just to ring up, and they've been really good on that front. So I know I've got plenty of support if I need it.
Okay, but it was more in the terms of like governmental supports or
right, yeah.
because
Well,
from my experience, you know, when it comes to mental health, it's a lot trickier to get support, and they don't take you as seriously compared to giving them a solid physical diagnosis. Right. So that's why I was asking, is if whether you'd experienced any of that, or whether or not your other health issues were more focused on in that sense.
Yeah, okay, I can mention that. What was it? There's only one thing I can really mention that is PIP, that you might have already known.
Yeah, that's exactly why I was mentioning it.
Absolute nightmare. I am completely. I am disabled. I've got a number of health conditions as it is. I've got endo, fibro, chronic gastritis, arthritis, and other things. Problems with my legs, the turning when I walk. Obviously, my BPD and my mental health and stuff like that as it is. The list just goes on. And what was it? I have problems walking. I've got like a walking stick behind me somewhere. There we go. And so I have mobility issues. And unfortunately, when doing PIP, I had a really bad experience. And at first, the first interview I had, they completely lost my report. And then after that, we had a house appointment, and there was this woman, and the report was full of lies. So I got all zeros. Despite having all these health issues and mobility issues, I got all zeros. It's like my health affects me every day. I'm in pain every day. I suffer every day, and I got zeros. So I had to fight for a tribunal. It was an absolute nightmare. But now, right now, I'm doing another. They gave me the minimal, but now that my health's gotten 10 times worse, long story short, everything's like more painful and stuff like that, more diagnoses. I'm now getting my PIP claim looked at again to get it bumped up because everything's gotten worse. Now I've just to wait because I've had the interview and now I've just to wait, but I'm not getting hopeful if I'm completely honest. And long story short, the government's help has been absolutely abysmal for my health, BPD and everything else. It's been abysmal. The government are absolutely hopeless.
You appealed the decision the first time round, yes?
Oh yeah, I did appeal. Yeah,
Yeah.
the first time round I did appeal, and they were like, "Oh," and I got all my evidence. I got everything, and
then you took it to court, right?
yeah, I had to take it to court because they said they were like, "We trust our assessment team," blah blah blah, even though it was lies after lies, and I couldn't do it myself, so I went to Citizens Advice, and they one of my best friends suggested them, and I had this really nice guy who helped me with everything, and we got the tribunal. I took them to court, so it was an utter stressful time. And then they just gave me the bare minimum just to go, okay, here's something. But now that things have gotten worse, it's like the bare minimum is not correct. So it's because I just accepted it at first just to like have something, but now it's gotten to the point where it's like, okay, my health's gotten 10 times worse. It's time to fight again. So now I'm just waiting on the result. It should take up to about 6 to 8 weeks. Well, with pandemic, it may take a little longer. So I'm just crossing my fingers, but not keeping my hopes up at this point.
Okay, so in terms of this, obviously this hinders your ability to function and I assume work.
What was it? Well, I am self-employed, but I can't do a lot. I can't do a lot of work. I can't go out. Be expected to go out in like a full day's 9 to 5 work because I can't stand for very long. I'm in a lot of pain. I can't walk very far. I'm in a lot of pain. Heck, I went to TwitchCon and my abilities were shining. My really really bad. It got to the point where the first day of TwitchCon, I had to go back to my hotel because I couldn't move anymore. I needed a wheelchair really badly, and I even had my stick on me, so I had to go back. I managed the second day after taking plenty of breaks. Thankfully, the people I was with were really understanding and supportive, and told me to sit plenty and things like that. But oh my word, the first day I could barely function. I was really really bad. It just reminded me how bad my health really, how severe my health really is. So it's really frustrating that the government think I'm just one of these people just trying it. Well, in reality, I'm not. I'm actually suffering really badly. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it does. It does affect work. Like I said, I work at home, but even then, when I stream, I have to take plenty of breaks because sitting can hurt and stuff like that. I've got like a special cushion as well, and I do certain days, and yeah, I can't do a lot. I can't do a lot of things in the house either. Like for example, I can't even cook. My husband has to help me out with a lot of things in the house. So yeah, I'm a lot more less able than I like. So that's what a lot of people don't seem to realize. And yeah, it's pretty tricky, but I try my best.
Was streaming a result of the development of your health and mental health issues as like a solution to your inability to work a normal job, or was it?
It started just as something for fun, but then well, before I started streaming, I actually got one of my best friends got me a job as a freelance composer into video games. So I managed to do some games, and since I was officially getting paid, I had to register self-employed the following year. And in that year, I started streaming. And then when I reached affiliate in a month, what was it? I started getting paid with that. So then it just became its own thing. So and it originally just started as like kind of like a hobby thing, but then it became my work as soon as I was getting paid for it. And then the music thing, I did a few tracks for this company before being let go because they started working in-house. And so then on the music front, I just started doing commissions and stuff like that. And if anyone wanted me to work on their projects, which I have a couple of people that do, I'll just be working on those. So it became it became a blessing in its own way, because due to my disabilities getting worse and not being able to do a lot of things, I felt this was like perfect to like work on. And with my husband already working, thankfully I don't have to panic too much if like things take a down day and stuff like that, because I've got my husband to fall back on type thing. But it really does help when I like earn a penny or two. Helps with like the house or the bills or the kids, or giving back to the community. So it definitely helps.
So you're a mother.
Yeah, I'm a mama
Yes.
too.
So how is sorry, I thought I heard that and then I went, did I? And so that was the question. Is that point where I'm second guessing my own hearing? So how has it been with your health and being a parent?
I don't know how I was able to have kids, because I didn't know I had endo till after I had kids. Which was actually quite funny. I've also got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome as well, so I think that was the reason why labour time was quite quick both times. But anyway, but yeah, being a mum is actually rewarding in itself, and I've been able to cope with that a lot better than I would have expected myself to cope. Because when I was younger, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to cope being a mom and stuff like that, especially with me being me. But I actually was able to cope with it, because with being autistic, there was routine involved and stuff like that. And I was able to like work around that. And any of the stuff I did struggle with, I had my husband to help me out. So we were pretty much teamwork since day one with parenting. And yeah, I've got 2 kids. So yeah, I'm doing all right with that. And now that they're older and they see, and unfortunately they are aware of my health, they are absolutely adorable about it. They're like, "Oh, mummy, I wish you were better. Oh, mummy, it's okay." Or they'll be like to people, "My mummy's got bad legs today," and I'll just be like, they are just the sweetest. Oh, gets me going.
So their response to your health has been positive then? They haven't struggled to understand it, or?
Yeah, they understand. They totally understand that I'm not the healthiest person out there, but they know that I try my best. I'm incredibly stubborn of all aspects of my health, and I push on as much as I can for them to, and they know it. So they're pretty much happy. They're happy with what they get and what they do.
And have they themselves like inherited any health issues?
One's not a health issue, but the other one is. My oldest is autistic, and he's picked up a lot of traits I have. So, and thanks to me, he sees it as a positive thing. So whenever he finds out someone's got autism, he gets really excited. So he's like, "They're autistic like me," and I'm just like, "Yes." Because I know there's a lot of people that see it as a negative thing, but I see it as a positive thing personally, and I see it as like a part of yourself, and it's something to be celebrated, in my opinion. So, but in my youngest, he's showing signs of having EDS because he's got hypermobile joints. But I recently tested him, but he didn't fit all of the criteria. But he did fit the criteria of hypermobile joints, and he's been getting signs I had as childhood. So I think he might grow up to get EDS. So, but he's just not shown enough signs yet. But we're going to wait and see. I'm going to test him again when he's older. But my youngest is definitely showing signs of EDS, unfortunately. But he's understanding it, and he's shown a positive outlook about it, so I'm just really proud of him.
Yeah, and that is really lovely to hear, because I grew up with 2 quite severely disabled parents, and they weren't necessarily disabled when I was born. It was one of those things that they had me quite young, like 21 and 23. My mum just had her 50th birthday the other day. and so they got sicker as I got older, essentially. But they were always fairly open about it, which allowed me to grow up understanding it. But I do have people being like, "Oh no, I don't tell my kids what's going on, or I hide it." I'm like, your kid just feels like that you're always in pain, and they won't tell you why, so they think it's their fault. Like, or they're just going to be like, I can't ask my parents anything because they always just sound upset, and it's so much nicer. Just trust your kids, people. Like,
Yeah.
it's not good news, but it's better than lying to them and not telling them things.
No, I
And then
agree.
if they do grow up with anything that you've not told them bugger all since they were a child.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I agree with you because when my late dad had cancer, he bless his heart, I know what he was trying to do. He didn't want to tell us anything. Well, he wanted us to know about the cancer, but he didn't want to know about the unfortunate advancing of it because he doesn't want to hurt us, which I completely understand. He doesn't want to hurt us, but to be honest, not the kids not knowing, it's just going to hurt them more. And it's trust your kids, as you say. And I'm pretty open and transparent to my kids about what's up. I'll be like, "Oh, I've got the hospital today," and they'll be like, "Oh, okay, mummy, good luck," and stuff like that, because they know I go to the hospital a lot for like my multiple conditions, or if like specific ones are flaring up and causing problems. So I recently had a scan for endometriosis again. So, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying. You trust your kids, and yeah, let them know. Don't want to cause any like damage with them not knowing, stuff like that. So awareness is very important.
Yeah, even when it's bad, I'll say as well. I know my mum wouldn't mind me sharing, but like with my very, very, very suspected ADHD, I don't really have any memories of childhood unless there was a particular emotional trigger attached to them. But one of the earliest things I do remember from my mum is her having a full-on breakdown outside of a doctor's office, like screaming, crying, falling to the floor kind of breakdown.
Yeah,
And it was depression, and it was a very like bad. She's not told me what happened at that time, but it was a bad enough period of depression that whatever was said at the doctor's was enough to cause a breakdown. But I don't look back on that with fear or malice or upset. I look back at it
yeah,
on, I'm glad I understood what mental health was when I was 11, because
yeah,
it
yeah,
made me go, "Mummy's crying. Well, it's not my fault. Nothing. She's not broken. Nobody's hurt her. Like, the dog's not dead. Like, she got some
yeah,
bad news at a doctor, and that's fine."
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so yeah.
Okay. Last question before we move on to audience questions. Tell us what you can take away from your experience. What good has come of it? And do you have any good representation in the media for you?
What good has come of it? Awareness, learning more about myself and things like that. Just getting the right support as well. People taking me seriously with it, and actually being able to say that I've got it and stuff like that instead of like suspecting for so long. As for representation in the media, I can't think of anyone at the top of my head, to be honest. But I'm sure there's plenty. I'm sure there's plenty, but I just can't think of anyone at the top of my head. Terrible. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I can only think of bad representations of
Yeah.
personality disorders in the media. Like, generally, if you say personality disorder, they go, psychopaths.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But if anyone knows of any, that would be great to know. But yeah, no, in terms of your experience, can you look back on it in a positive light? Has it helped you understand yourself better? Has it helped you understand others better? Is it?
Yeah, it's helped me understand myself better, definitely. Looking back, like whenever I had specific breakdowns, whenever it came to like either people or myself, I can now go back and go, oh, and like understand it more. Or like whenever I had like really more severe days and stuff like that, or days where I just felt like there was like happy pangs in my stomach, like I feel like I could do anything. It's like, okay, I know why I was like that day. It's like I can actually pinpoint moments in the past where I had no idea at that point. But I definitely can see like plenty of positives and plenty of awareness stuff as well.
Okay.
What's up?
Pan, do you have any questions before we move on to audience questions? Which I've only got 2, so we've still got 15 minutes to fill. Go.
I was just having a quick Google, and apparently, although it's not confirmed, Ralph from Wreck-It Ralph is suspected of having BPD, or at least has been one of those that some people with BPD have looked at the film and gone, that a lot of that seems correct even without them saying it. So that might be a positive representation, especially with the very positive message at the end of self-acceptance. Yep. You know, using what you've got to carry on. So.
Yay! I've seen the first one. I've not seen the second one.
Yeah. And Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is the other one that comes up, but I've not actually seen that myself. So.
Yeah, I see. I would say that one was definitely more of a potentially personality disorder-esque. The thing is, right, it's difficult to really go, this is one particular personality disorder, because there are so many renditions of it that often media will just take from a wide variety of them rather than one specific one. So Eternal Sunshine definitely is probably a very good example of at least mental health. You're gonna hate me for this. I've only really watched Wreck-It Ralph like once, but Ralph is the main guy, right?
Yeah.
Right. I would say that is less BPD and more an aggressive personality disorder, which is is quite a separate like section of the personality disorder umbrella.
However, the film does explore that he only acts that way because that's how people stigmatize him and typecast him to be, and when actually left to his own devices, that's not who he is. And so the film is accepting both his good parts and his flaws and understanding himself. So I can see why people could think it's a representation.
I can get that. It's more of the fact that assuming that an aggressive personality disorder means that the same can be said of the opposite. It's like that is stigmatizing aggressive personality disorder as being so it's that scenario of like it's that kind of like wide arcing kind of, it's more of the umbrella than it is like a specific one that they're ever going to cover, because there's going to be so many elements of each. And that's usually the issue with personality disorders as well, is that they can't actually, well, that's what they tell me down in Oxford, is they don't tend to actually give you a specific diagnosis of personality disorders if they can avoid it, because you can fit into many of them. So they treat it more of a case of an umbrella thing rather than a specific, unless it's very, very obvious that it's like a problematic one, and it's a danger to others, or yourself, then they'll have to obviously address it a bit more. But it's more of a case of you can fit into so many branches of it that it's more about approaching how to give you coping strategies and tools to aid in dealing with that, rather than actually going, here's a diagnosis and off you trot.
The two other ones that definitely feel like reaching on this list are Darth Vader and Bella from the second Twilight movie.
The second one specifically.
The second one specifically.
Only not the first one or the third one. No, just the second one.
Just the second one. Okay. Just the one where she was displaying troubling behaviours. So that's obviously one that they've just gone, hey, that looks bad. Let's just say it's that. That's no. So yes, that's going to be very much an assumption based on stigma, as you've explained. So fun.
Okay.
Here we go, stigma again. Yay!
Right. So I have 3 audience questions to go over. First audience question is, what advice would you give to someone who is diagnosed with BPD or suspects they have BPD?
Oh, that's a good question. What was it? What advice? Good to have someone like professional with you, like for example, like psychiatry or therapy or something. If you are feeling like you're still not fully feeling okay, if you're still feeling a bit all over the place, especially after a diagnosis, so you can have someone to talk to about it. Or if you're after medication, not everyone can, not everyone needs to use medication. Do as you will. Is your no problems if you have medication. No problems if you don't use medication. Everybody's different, but it's good to just to have like maybe like aftercare. It's good, or even if you're suspecting you've got it, it's good to have someone to talk to. So that if you're suspecting that you've got it, you can get directed to the person to get diagnosed, which is normally psychiatry. And if you are already diagnosed, it'd be good to like just get those feelings just out, and then just see where do you want to go from there. Like, do you want to go for medication? Do you want to get other help? Do you think you'll be okay alone? Have you got the right company? Are you not okay? And it's good just to like see where you want to go from there, regardless of diagnosis. Good to get some help in you if possible. I know it's harder in other countries. I'm not sure where you're based. But that's if you're able to get the help, then that's what I recommend.
Okay, and I just realised that that pretty much is the advice that you'd give for the one of the other questions as well, because it was more about like, well, it was more aimed at ADHD or other sort of mental health, but it's it's the same kind of
same
like,
answer, yeah,
overarching. Make sure that you actually approach your
same, pretty much the same idea. If you feel you've got ADHD or you're autistic or BPD or whatever, pretty much the same advice. Just get yourself out there, get to a medical professional, talk to someone, and hopefully they can refer you to the right department if you want to get tested.
Yeah, and I would add to that in a case of if you've someone with high anxiety or you've had a bad experience with your medical professionals, go in with as much evidence, records, take in notes of various symptoms, keep a journal, take in scientifically approved tests of these sorts of scenarios. For example, with ADHD, 100%. there are WHO approved tests that you can take as evidence, and then it gives you a printout of breakdown. You can tell that I've already done this myself. That you can take to your GP to show them that this is what you are experiencing, and this is how you've been assessed via these WHO approved quizzes that will allow you to at least point in the right direction. But yeah,
I 100% agree. I agree with all that, because what I would always do, Drax's advice is just top notch. What I'd always do is like I would do my homework, and I'm one for notes. I would constantly write notes and tell them everything that I felt that I matched with so and so and so and so. But yeah, I definitely agree with Drax's way as well, because you're taking in all the evidence, and then they'll see how seriously you're taking it, and they'll be like, oh crap. So yeah, it's a good idea.
I mean, 100%. I come from a very paranoid perspective of the fact that I've had very bad experiences for a very long time. I have all of my medical history printed off in a filing cabinet for exactly these scenarios where I need to prove like all of the times in which things have happened, every time I've been into hospital, all of the previous help that I've had, so that we don't have to waste time going over all of the previous tests. It may seem overkill, but you've got to you've got to remember that you've got 10 minutes at most with a healthcare professional. Of at least your first assessment with a GP, for example. You've got to make sure that you get to the point and you agree that that's the point that you're getting to. and actually get something from it. And if you've got multiple issues, then you're on the fucking clock, and you've got to get all of that shit out. So the more that you can go in with, the more that you can have a very clear, straightforward, this is what the problem is, this is how I think that we should approach it, what are your suggestions, what's the next step, is the best way that you can approach these things, and get the most out of it.
Yeah, what I've learned. Oh, sorry, were you saying something?
I'll go after you. It's all good.
Sorry. What I've learned is with my endometriosis appointments, that you've got to go all in. You've got to go all in for them to listen, because unfortunately some don't. So that's why you've really got to do all this stuff. All right, there you go, Pan.
You don't have to wait till you're in crisis either. It's definitely a thing I see a lot in the UK, because they don't. It's one of those things that, our services are experiencing high-low. Please only call if you're in serious distress. No, fuck that shit. Like, especially if you do think there's a mental health concern, when they tend to get bad, they tend to get bad, and it will be quite quick. So it's one of those things that if you're suspecting something, you can at least tell them and go for that initial appointment. And if they do not agree, or they won't test you any further, ask that to be put on your records, because then if something does happen and you need to see someone urgently, you can say, I came in 6 months ago, they said no, but here's what's happened since. Let's look back at this now, because you've already had that first appointment. Let's kick it further, because it may sound counterproductive, but instead of having your crisis moment where you're not necessarily in the best mind to deal with all the questions, be the very first time you talk about it, and they'll go, well, why'd you wait so long? It's better to just be like, are you taking this too seriously? It's like, yes, I am. Let's put it on my notes, please, and let's go from there. Even if it turns out to be wrong, it's better to have had the conversation.
Yeah, like, you don't want to be going when it's to a point where you can't even face actually having a conversation with the person. Yeah. Especially when it's mental health. I know from my own personal experience, the last thing I want to be doing when I get bad is seeking help. At that point, it's too fucking late. I don't want to be talking to someone, because I don't want to help myself, because at that point, that's not the thing that's on my mind. And that's the point that you want to avoid getting to, because at that point, you've already gone down the spiral, and it's very difficult to get back up. You want to be getting there to the health professional before it gets so far down the spiral that it's years before you can climb back out of it. And that's what they don't seem to advertise when they're talking about healthcare and when you should see your doctor and using the NHS services. Most of the NHS services for mental health are actually designed for those who aren't quite that bad. Like, most of the services are designed for people who are having a little bit of a blip. They aren't prepared for people who have got so far down the spiral that there is years of effort in their future. But the thing is that they don't want you to come to them until it's serious. So really, there's a complete and utter miscommunication between the services that they have and what when they want people to actually use those services. So yeah, go for it before it gets to that point.
Yep, and remember, it's not just a GP you have to see. It really depends. If you're having a crisis, or you are feeling low and you don't want to trouble a GP for some reason, you can actually go to a pharmacy and ask to speak to the on-call pharmacist, who's usually medically trained. You can speak to them. You could go to a sexual health clinic, because usually have somebody there has some experience with mental health or psychiatry, who obviously is not going to be able to diagnose and sort you out right and then, but they might be able to give you decent resources. Even most libraries will have like a drop-in service or a mental health line somewhere pasted in there that you can go and find some help with. And they will normally now have like a flag post sign list that says like difficult topics, so you can go and find books without having to ask anyone. So there is support in areas you may not expect to look, but that might be more helpful for you than a GP, if you're at the point where you can manage talking to a few different people.
And again, I can only really speak from the UK perspective. So it, although I suspect it's quite similar in a lot of places. If you are at a stage where it is that you need help right now, the waiting lists are so long that you are, and some of the services, especially for things like personality disorders, require you to not actually be having any other help while you're on those waiting lists or while you're in their services. So you are on a waiting list for 2 years with no support. And that is in itself just ridiculous, because I mean, you have to be in a good place to be able to be on the waiting lists, frankly. So don't get to the point where you need to you need the services right now. It's really important. Anyway, on to the last question, unless any more questions want to be submitted. What advice would you give to peers of someone with BPD to bring awareness to when the individual with BPD is experiencing behavioural exacerbation?
Oh, that's a mouthful. That's just made my brain go bloop.
What advice would you give to people around you on ways to support you?
What was it? I would personally, for ways people to support me. One thing with BPD is people like most is reassurance. That's like the top thing. The one at the top is reassurance. Like, even though we know, like, our close circle is the greatest thing, they're amazing, and they think we're amazing and stuff like that. It's good to be reminded from time to time. It's like, you just need that refresh. With BPD, you just need that refresh that they think you're great and stuff like that, because after a time, like, your mind starts to play up. So having that reassurance, despite knowing the truth anyway, is good to have. Like, if you're having a bad day or just a regular day, it's good to be reminded. It just puts like a bit of pep in your step and stuff like that. But also, oh, my mind's just gone blank. I just remembered I knew that first one. Just to be reminded that if, like, anyone that's close to you, they let you know that they're there for you, like, anytime, like, if, like, you're having a bad spell and stuff like that. Obviously, if someone's got their own problem, it may be a bit different. But if they're okay themselves and they're able to take on more, then they should let the person in question know, so they know for sure that they've got someone to go to, and they don't have to feel like they're bothering them because they said it's okay and things like that. And this is when my brain's just totally went bloop. It's got a lot of info in my head today. But I hope that's okay.
That's fine, that's fine. Okay. Pan, do you have any further questions?
Nope, sorry, I keep turning the fan on and off with the microphone, but no, nothing else from me at the minute. It's been fantastic talking to you, Raven, and hearing from you, because I don't think we've had an opportunity to talk in depth about personality disorders so far. So
yeah, it's been great talking to you both. Also, you both are amazing.
Raven, is there any last tidbits, words of wisdom, things that you would like to mention or talk about before we do our sign off?
Well, I can't think of anything else at the moment, but anyone with any conditions, health conditions, mental health conditions, you're all amazing, no matter what. It doesn't stop you from being an amazing person that you are. And life can suck, health can suck, but that doesn't mean you do. That's my footnote.
Okay. Once again, can we get some shout outs for Pan and Raven? Go check them out. Go spread some love. And yeah, sorry this one was a little bit shorter. We were quite efficient with our questioning today. But yes, I hope this was educational. I hope this was interesting. Next Through Our Eyes stream will actually be next week. with Tiffany Witcher, which will be exciting. And next stream for me will be tomorrow. But yes, thank you all for hanging out. I hope you had fun. I hope you have a good rest of your day or evening. If you'd like to keep in contact outside of stream, do follow on the socials, the Twitters, the Instagrams, the Discords, the... I don't know, are you on SoundCloud? Is that what people do? They're...
Oh,
The
yes.
socials.
I don't know where people do their music these days. I'm so archaic.
Bandcamp, Spotify.
There we go. There we go. But yes, thank you all. I hope you have a good one, and I will see you all soon. Say bye, all.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, the stream deck does not work.